Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be going over Rivian and the recent news that they filed for an IPO with an $80 billion valuation. Now before getting into that, if you could smash the like button, it really helps the YouTube algorithm, and if you're not subscribed yet, definitely subscribe. So Friday afternoon we started getting a lot of articles that basically Rivian filed for this IPO seeking an $80 billion valuation. Now, I'm a fan of the company, and I think they have a really cool brand, and the partnership with Amazon I actually think is a game changer for them. But that said, just earlier in July of 2021, so this year, Rivian raised about $2.5 billion in new funding, mostly led by Amazon and Ford. Another large investor was T. Rowe Price. T. Rowe Price was also a big investor in Tesla in the early days. Now, this electrical vehicle startup, Rivian, has basically raised $10.5 billion since 2019, including this $2.5 billion that they raised in July of this year. Now, Ford being one of the big investors, it's probably important to point out that in February of 2019, Rivian announced a $500 million investment from Ford, and that partnership was to deliver basically new Ford battery electric vehicles, so that Rivian was going to basically help them provide, I guess, the batteries, or, probably not the production side, but the batteries for these Ford cars to come. And in 2020, Ford decides that they're going to cancel the Rivian-powered EV and basically instead focus on making EVs themselves. So we see that Ford and Lincoln decided to cancel working with Rivian on the battery electric cars. Now, Amazon, on the other hand, I think is a fantastic partnership with Rivian. Amazon's been pouring money into Rivian through these investments. Amazon said last October that it's going to have 10,000 custom electric delivery vehicles on the road by 2022, and they're trying to get 100,000 of these custom EV vans for delivering packages by 2030. And this is mostly, pretty much all of it as a deal with Rivian. Now, these cars are really cool. They're really customized for Amazon. You could even see, even in the seat, they have the Amazon logo. If you see on the bottom left corner, you see that the steering wheel has the Amazon logo in it. They obviously decal the body with Prime. They have Amazon in the front of it. So they're really customizing these vans for Amazon. They obviously make them as well. For other customers, they'll be willing, I'm sure, to make them. But they are, badging them out and really making them custom for what Amazon needed, I'm sure. So my guess is that Ford is probably going to cash out of their investment at some point with Rivian. It's not too hard to see legacy automakers do this. It's because Rivian's being valued at $80 billion. That's more than what Ford is valued at today. And back in 2009, we saw this happen with Daimler. Daimler, the parent company of Mercedes-Benz, they invested $50 million for roughly 9% of Tesla's stock. This was many years ago, before the IPO, I believe. And then Daimler sold its stake for Tesla for $780 million, which is a huge return on the $50 million they put in. Amazing, amazing deal. It was about 4% of Tesla stock because of dilution that's happened along the way. But that said, if they were to hold that stock and not cash out, that 4% stake in Tesla would be worth $28.2 billion today. Now, maybe it would have been diluted a little more, but the point is, it would have been worth far, far more than the $780 million that they cashed out on. And I have the opinion that Ford is probably going to cash out as well because they'll think they can do things better themselves. That's the reason they're not having Rivian make their battery electric vehicle either. Now, Amazon, I'm going to speculate here as well, and I think that Amazon, if Rivian stock was to fall far enough and get beaten down, I think they're the kind of company that would look to make an acquisition offer to just take Rivian over completely. Amazon has obviously interest in the space. They have acquired other companies like Zoox that works on autonomy driving, different types of technology around self-driving cars. And Amazon definitely likes to control, the situation. They were making strategic investments along the way. So I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon was to eventually acquire Rivian outright. Now, I don't think they would acquire them at an $80 billion valuation. I do think the stock would have to fall for them to acquire them. But that said, it is more in the cards for an Amazon to do that. Now, let's get to this valuation, $80 billion. Keep in mind, this company, Rivian, has not yet delivered any trucks to its customers. Obviously, they're probably working and delivering with Amazon as a customer, but I mean to the retail customer, they have not yet delivered any of the pickup trucks or SUVs that they are making. Elon Musk even commented on this, which we're going to look at and see all the things that have been happening on Twitter around it. So the first comment to show here is Elon Musk saying, don't want to be unreasonable, but maybe they should be required to deliver at least one vehicle per $1 billion of valuation before the IPO. Now, this was in response to a tweet from Sawyer Merritt, basically saying, breaking news, Rivian Automotive has filed for an initial public offering seeking roughly $80 billion valuation. The company would like to do an IPO around November 25th, Thanksgiving holiday. So Elon clearly disagreeing on the valuation of 80 billion and kind of mocking them for not producing any vehicles yet. Then we had Elon comment here, to Ivan Escobosa, saying, where Ivan wrote, remember when Tesla producing hundreds of thousands of cars and was worth 30 billion just a few years ago? Elon Musk saying yes. Basically, Elon's poking fun at this high valuation for Rivian, and also at the same time showing how these other companies are being treated much different than Tesla was treated when it was in the similar position that they were in back then. Here's another thing. This is from Ed Ludlow. He is basically for the West Coast, works for Bloomberg TV. And he basically says Tesla reached a market cap of 80 billion in January of 2020. In 2019, it delivered 367,500 vehicles. In 2020, it delivered almost 500,000. So also showing that, the difference between a company worth 80 billion that hasn't delivered vehicles to its customers yet versus Tesla only hitting that valuation after delivering about 400,000 vehicles. Then the last thing here, this was before the IPO announcement, Elon Musk even poking fun at Rivian, because Rivian showing that they're looking at a $5 billion U.S. plant in Fort Worth, Texas. This would be the second factory they're trying to open. And Elon Musk commenting, I'd recommend they get their first plant working. It's insanely difficult to reach volume production at affordable unit cost. Basically showing that even before this IPO was announced, that, Rivian is kind of getting ahead of themselves. They haven't even, got to production scale in their first factory, and they're talking about factory number 2. Here's one last tweet that we'll show from Jason DeBolt. He's one of the famous Twitter accounts and people who invested in Tesla in the early days and made it quite a large amount of money through investing early and holding, basically, and not willing to sell. Still holds all his shares, I believe. He wrote 80 billion Rivian valuation for bagel cars sold, so 0 cars sold. Tesla sold tens of thousands of Model S vehicles in 2013 with a 20 billion market cap, and 6 years later, when Tesla was selling hundreds of thousands of vehicles, its market cap was only 37 billion. Seems legit. Now, these comments tell a very true story, and keep in mind Tesla was not only selling hundreds of thousands of cars per year, but they also were working on full self-driving, battery storage, solar, HVAC, and plenty of other projects beyond just the automobile. Now, here's what happened, in my opinion. Tesla did the impossible. It scaled auto manufacturing of EVs, and it did it profitably. Now, this was no easy task. Elon said that he went through hell to make it happen. He called it production hell plenty of times. Now, it was the hardest time of his life, he has said, and he's said that he had extremely hard times as a child. Now, the market is taking the success of Tesla as an indicator that the rest of these EV plays are also going to succeed. And we've seen this play out with Nikola, Fisker, Lucid, and others. Their companies come out in the public markets. They haven't sold any cars yet. They have insanely high valuations. Many of them still have very high valuations, and most of them come down a ton from those high peaks. Now, the truth is that most of these companies will not succeed. Now, I'm not hating on them. The truth is it's just an extremely difficult business. It's extremely hard to ramp production of these cars, and an auto company has not actually succeeded, a new auto company before Tesla, in like 100 years or something. So it's an extremely competitive and hard space that is super capital intensive. Now, I think most are going to go through probably mergers and acquisitions or go out of business. And I think more than likely, because of brand awareness, etc., they'll probably go through merger and acquisition, as well as factory equipment for EVs and all these legacy car makers that will need that expertise and talent, etc. So I think that there is a bigger likelihood of a lot of them getting acquired by legacy automakers to kind of help them transition versus just going out of business straight up. That said, I do think they are very high valuations. Now, for Rivian specifically, I do think they're going to succeed. I do think that the Amazon partnership is key for them to succeeding and will provide continuous revenue, hopefully. But I don't think they're worth $80 billion. Now, Rivian was valuing the company earlier this year in 2021 at about $25 billion. So for them to go from 25 billion in the same year to 80 billion just seems a little unreasonable since not much has changed. I think a fair valuation to IPO would be about 30 to 35 billion. I do think you should be paying slight premium to what Amazon and Ford paid earlier in the year. That said, 80 billion is way too high. But this is actually a pretty smart plan for Rivian, because here's what's going to happen. If they come out at 80 billion and investors, are willing to pay that insanely high price, they're going to raise a ton of money at such a high valuation. And then who cares if the stock falls? Let's say it falls down by 50%. Then the company is going to be worth 40 billion, still above my 30 to 35 billion range. And they're going to have raised all this extra capital, putting their balance sheet in a better place. So they're smart for doing it. If people are willing to pay 80 billion valuation, investors on the street, then you know what? Take advantage of those suckers early on. Take the money, have a better balance sheet, be in a better position to execute for the future. And I'm not gonna, for me, I'm gonna wait and see. And when it drops, that's when I'd be more interested in taking a position. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm curious what you're gonna do. Comment below, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't liked this video and you made it to the end, definitely smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Thanks so much. Until next time.